What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan, your DIY guy. If you're new here, welcome. Go ahead, like and subscribe so you can catch all of this exciting DIY content that we got going on. Now, this is part 2 of an epic backyard makeover series where we build a cozy couple seater and fire pit, as well as some trendy landscaping. So you want to make sure you are subscribed. Go ahead, click it now. And of course, go ahead and follow us on Instagram, where you'll catch some of this content before YouTube as a VIP. So without any further ado, let's get into part 2. We left off in part 1 by leaving the bench seater and fire pit to cure up over the weekend after we finished plastering it. Most of it had cured out, but still needed a little more time to dry out. So we came back Monday morning bright and early to get down to our patio pavers, which means you'll have to wait a little bit longer to see how the paint work turned out on the bench seater and fire pit. So hang 10, but let's jump into the patio pavers. You can see we've roughly laid them out across the surface just to get an idea of the layout we're going to go for, to avoid as many cuts as possible, because these are quite thick patio pavers, about 50 millimeters. We then moved on to preparing our ground surface to remove any stones that were left over from the build and smooth it out before laying down a layer of river sand. And this just acts as a bedding agent to allow our patio pavers to sit comfortably and not crack, which is a very important part of this process. So we've laid down a layer and we're going for a little hump in the center for water to drain off on either side, front and back of the seating area. And here you can see we are placing them down and spacing them about 10 centimeters apart. This will ensure that they run past the fire pit and seater adequately and allowing for minimal cuts, which you'll see coming up shortly. We also use a rubber mallet just to tap them in place. This is the first section that went down, and can you believe it? There's about 20 of these pavers in place. I think we probably used close to 80. Keep that in mind because it is a large amount of patio pavers in a relatively small area. And then we could continue with our river sand, and you can see in the front my colleague is laying it out smoothly, getting to the finished surface, while the other colleague is laying it out evenly in preparation to be leveled so that we can get our patio pavers down consistently. Now, as I mentioned before, you could use a string line all the way down, but we had many interruptions which would have disturbed that line. So we laid it out using a tape measure as well as a spirit level, which did the trick as well. When you've got areas of unobstructed pathways, then string lines are a good idea in order to get a perfectly straight line, so it doesn't catch your eye and make you wonder what happened there. Here's a pro tip for your patio paver project. Make sure not to skip the river sand base, because this will literally end up in heartbreak when your patio pavers crack. So the way a patio paver is made is via a mold, and when the mold is released, the bottom of the patio paver is typically rough with a few gaps and divots, which the river sand base fills, preventing any cracking. Hey, by the way, can you spot the odd one out in this batch? Let me know down in the comments below. So once we laid them all down, which required a bit of planning up front, as I mentioned earlier, which saved us from a ton of cuts, now we can see where we actually do have to cut, which is by the water feature, around our fire pit, and of course around our bench seater. But that will be taken care of using our circular saw, which is pretty easy. And if you want to go and check out a tool review, go and click on the link either down in the description box, or of course go and check out the playlist under our tool review section, where you can go and catch that on the Makita electric grinder. But anyway, we move on to our Waterwise plants, and these little guys are called dwarf mondo grass. Aren't they just adorable? You do get a larger variety, but I personally think they create a tripping hazard, which you don't want in an area like this. And these guys stay low. They don't work like typical grass where they spread out, and they are more just for the look. And then of course we've got our awesome little succulent trays, which come from our wonderful supplier C&D Nursery in the east of Johannesburg. They even have an aloe farm out in Hartbeespoort Dam, so go and check them out. Take the family and the kids and go and have a day outing, going to buy a few cool plants at awesome prices, to be quite honest. Now you can see they come in a variety of succulents. Most of them are pretty low lying, but these guys are my favorite, called Campfire, which we're going to be placing around our campfire or the fire pit. Now we fan them out from the bench seater just to keep some symmetry and keep them aligned, and we left some spaces for the homeowner to add her own personal touch. There you can see the campfire around the fire pit, which is pretty cool. Most of them are low lying, so even if you step on them, they'll bounce back in no time, which is awesome. And then against the wall, we've added a few varieties that grow a bit taller, which will add a great backdrop to the wall. Let me know down in the comments below what you would have done differently in this area. Some people like gravel stone, maybe pebbles, even cobblestone, but I'd love to hear what you've got in your mind in terms of design. With all of the plants and patio pavers now fully installed, we turn our attention to the prep work before we start painting, and that includes using some finishing plaster just to fill in any low spots or divots that we may have found in the plaster work. And of course we use a 100 grit sandpaper just to smooth off any high spots or imperfections and smooth that out before we start with our primer application, which ensures you have a solid surface and an excellent finish. Now once you're done with all your sanding and prep work, make sure to dust off your surfaces just to ensure that your primer has the best opportunity to adhere to the surface, which is the next step where we apply a double coat of an exterior grade PVA primer. This just ensures that your surface is somewhat sealed so that when you apply your paint, the paint has something to adhere to, and if you skip this step, your paint will start peeling off in no time. Now white is a pretty popular option, but our client opted for a color application, and you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer just to see how that color turned out. It is pretty epic, so stay tuned. And finally, the moment you've been waiting for, our bench seater and fire pit are fully primed in both inside and out. And as you can see, it turned out magnificent. A lot of clients actually opt for a white finish because it gives a very smooth, clean and modern look. But as I mentioned, our client opted for a beautiful slate gray, and this is what it looks like. This is from Durham Smart Paint, and in fact all their paints are excellent quality and priced very well. Now this is a cool trick. It is a paint for a cement floor, but it contains a polyurethane which makes it super tough. It is easy to apply and has excellent coverage, as well as what we call obliteration, which means that it will cover other paint surfaces pretty well. And take a look at it. It adds a semi-gloss finish to your paint, which makes your project look stunning for longer. Because the last thing you want with an outdoor project is to continually be cleaning. This will be a breeze. And as you can see, it applies pretty smoothly. We of course applied 2 coats, but to be quite honest, you could have probably applied 1 single coat. But given that this is outdoors, we wanted to make sure that we have the best coverage for our Boma and fire pit seater so that we can ensure a quality finish right throughout its lifetime. Next up, we also gave some TLC to the interior walls of the fire pit, and no, that's not ordinary black paint. We actually applied a heat-resistant paint up to 700 degrees centigrade. Yep, you heard that right. It not only makes the area cohesive with our black metal fire pit, but it also makes our fire pit more effective, and so you've got that added reassurance. Again, another beautiful product from Durham Smart Paint. They're not a sponsor of the channel as yet, but hey, if you're listening, well, give us a shout. Before we light up this fire pit, we need to add a base of river sand to the bottom. Now, in addition to the gravel stone that you see at the bottom over there, this river sand base will aid in excess water drainage to dissipate any water that may enter our metal fire pit. And secondly, it will also keep our fire pit at the right height, which is to the top of the brickwork. Now, once we have about a 10 centimeter layer of river sand, we can compact it adequately enough so that it doesn't slump over time and cause any unevenness. And then we can measure out exactly where we need our fire pit to sit and top up any river sand accordingly. Here is our fire pit that you've seen in part 1, and in fact, it's actually a barbecue unit or braai unit that comes complete with legs. We just left it off because it fits perfectly in our application, and in fact, the entire construction we just did works for this little fella, and I think it turned out pretty awesome. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Well, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as we did making it. And if you aren't yet, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of this exciting content. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up so YouTube knows to recommend it to other people. And we'll catch you next time on Nail and Screw.